I'm Jean Parker, and I'm a sculptor. And this exhibition that we're about to see is an exploration of grief and loss, but through my eyes as a sculptor and through my hands working in alabaster and stone. So the story starts with these little figures here, and heads, really. These are made of bronze. They were originally done in clay, and when I was ill 6 years ago with cancer, breast cancer, hence Bald Statements is the name of the exhibition, where I was bald and feeling really rather ill, went on a retreat for a week, and each day they gave me a lump of clay. And the lump of clay, I just looked in the mirror and really just found myself looking and portraying, doing a quick sketch of what I felt that day. So that first one, and I did these, say, together, these two little bronzes, though they were in clay originally, were like people saying to you, "How are you? How are you?" And you say, "I'm fine. Thank you very much. I'm fine." Of course you're fine at one level. So because you've got your mask on and you've got maybe your wig on, you're protecting yourself against intrusion, really, unless it's somebody that's you're safe with. So when I went on this retreat, I always go on retreat, ecumenical retreat, once a year, but I always go feeling fine. I'm fine. And it doesn't take long with good people in a safe place for the mask to slip and the wig to go, and you're exposed and you're vulnerable and you're saying how you truly feel, which is what you're there for. Otherwise it's a waste of time. So I went through the week, and each day did a different emotion, and halfway through I realized I was talking about the grief process and started to manipulate the material a bit. So I had an exhibition looming, and I either had to cancel or do something. So I hadn't worked for a year because I was ill, and decided to go ahead, 9 months ahead. I blew these all up into these large photographs, these small heads, and then translated them into the alabasters that you'll see as we go round. Same theme, same topic, but expressed differently because the process is different. So these are very raw and immediate, and as I say, a sketch. And these are more reflective, and the process is slower, and the effect is different. So if we looked at this first one, this is this I'm all right, translated into this one here. This is the alabaster with the smooth face and the wig. And you need that. You need to protect yourself, because you get people asking, really not really wanting to know, and you need to trust the people. But here you're in the vice-like grip of whatever the shock. On the face of it, it's about cancer and loss of hair, as I say, but actually it's about loss, significant loss of any kind, because I guarantee you'll go through this. Give or take, you'll go through some of these emotions, and maybe I've missed some out. I think perhaps by the end you'll think, oh, you've missed out something, but nevertheless, it's valid, I think, as it stands. So here you're in the vice-like grip of denial, and you're saying, I'm fine. You may not be fine, you're probably not fine, but you're not in a position to admit it at this stage, or maybe you don't know how you truly feel. So it doesn't take long to get here. It's if you're in safe hands with good people and you trust them. So when somebody says, how are you? The mask has slipped and the wig has gone, and the reality is the pain of whatever the loss. And translated into this was a very nice piece of stone with a hole in it, so I got it cheap. But in fact, it became the scream. It's like Munch's scream from the bottom of your boots. It's a very raw, painful emotion, which is universal. This is universal. Most people will go through this, and it is the worst bit, I think. The realization that this is terrible. Accompanying this one, which was the scream, is very powerful. No, it's saying no, this can't be so. It can't be so. Whether it's the, you've been given bad news, whatever, the loss, the response can be, but no, it can't be true. It cannot be true. And depending on the loss, the intensity varies, of course. But whatever the loss, there's always this questioning. This is questioning. But why? Don't understand why. It may be, why me? But for me, it wasn't why me. It was why anybody. Trying to understand and make sense is a very natural part of the grief process, I think, common to everybody's experience. So here's the raw, appealing why, really. It's saying, like a child almost, I don't understand, but why? Why has this happened? Or the more philosophical one is, but why? I don't understand these things. And so you can have a completely different kind of why. So whatever the why, it's always there somewhere, because you need to make sense. You need to make sense if you're divorced. You can go into this in great detail. Why? And you can take months trying to understand your part in it. Or if somebody's had an accident, I had a son who died, and his daughter-in-law, I needed to know when. When did it happen? Where? How? Why? Always the why. Cancer, wasn't too bothered. But other people are quick to tell you why. Why? The answer. So we go from why to another stage which is very difficult for me, which is anger. This sculpture in alabaster, again, has upset lots of people because it touches a chord, and I've been accused of all sorts of things, and how dare I produce something so ugly, and in the cathedral in Coventry, how dare they show this in this beautiful place, and so on. My response was, well, where else would you show? If you can't talk about anger in the cathedral, where can you? Anyway, but I've just illustrated a very, very emotive and difficult one, particularly for ladies, and particularly for ladies of my vintage, really. Because we were not brought up to deal with anger. We were always discouraged from overt anger. And consequently, even though you were angry at the loss, and you probably were very angry, deeply down, you didn't like to say, because you didn't like to risk disapproval, you didn't like to risk any repercussions in any way. So, on the whole, you didn't express it. And one of the reasons, I think, for me, when I look back, is that it was a fear of loss of control with anger. And you need to see the back as well as the front, because it's trying to say that when you're that angry, you've lost the plot. You lose control. You've lost your head. Off your head. She's off her head. People can be very cruel about anger and very frightened of it when it's expressed, especially in women. And they step back. They don't come and comfort you. They move away from you. They don't like it. Angry men, okay. But angry women, not so good. So here, my feeling about this one too is not that it's not such anger as anguish. It's still anguish. It's still too painful to be clear anger. And I wrestled with it. I wrestled with it in the small clay because I couldn't do it. It was the only one I couldn't access very easily for my own reasons. And it became a very introverted, tight, anger buried. And people, again, it's more masculine, I think, that approach. I think you're very fortunate if you can express anger and let it go. I have 2 daughters as well as had 2 sons. We've got 1 son, of course, now. Very good at anger, up to a point that makes it tolerable. But at least they're honest and say they're in touch with how they feel and they don't disguise it. I still can't express anger, but I am aware of it. I know that frisson of anger, or the spurt that comes, and so I can recognize it even if I can't express it, and that's halfway along the road. So with the loss comes anger at other people, someone to blame, particularly in my frame of reference, Christian, angry with God. How, I thought that this was to be a happy world, and you've created a world where terrible things happen. People are inhuman to one another. You do dreadful things, there's illness and so on. Huge anger with God, but a very good precedent for it in Job and Psalms, and that was very, very helpful, actually. So you ask questions and you're angry, and there's no answers, really, no easy answers, but you're entitled to ask the questions and entitled to be angry. And when I was young, had been taught, really, that anger was part of life and given permission to be angry and said it's okay to be angry, or shown how to deal with anger, it would have been, I think I would not have had the problems that I had later. But that's personal. So I wasn't very good at that, but I was quite good at the next one. This is what some people do. I think you do it anyway, but you do it quite a lot if you're not very at home with anger. You slip more comfortably into sadness, where people come and comfort you, and they don't turn away. So there's something in it for you up to a point. It's not clinical depression. It's just normal sadness, reaction to loss, which is really acceptable with understanding and within boundaries. And an awful lot of people identify with this one. And this was the raw one, which was very true, just really fed up, to put it simply. Desolate and sad, and wishing sometimes almost to the point of I wish I was dead. But to admit it is very difficult, and to accept it and be on the receiving end of this kind of emotion is also hard. So that was the literal one, but this is the white sad face of the clown. And when people say they're fine, you look in the eyes, because the eyes are the giveaway. And there's this universal body language. It doesn't matter. Everybody understands that. And here's the face with no mouth, and there's no ears, because you're inside yourself, and as I felt anyway, and you have got nothing to say. You're not interested really in anything or anyone beyond trying to survive with what the loss is, and you're up against this brick wall. There's a face here, you just can't move, and you don't know how long you'll be here, and some people think they'll be there forever. But the helpful thing about this is that you see it in a different context. You see it as a part of a process, and it won't go on forever, because you can't sustain this level of pain, whether it's anger or whether it's sadness. You do move on, and millions of people can testify to that. You just do, and you don't know when or how, but gradually you come out of it and move on. Well, there's a huge transition from that sadness across to this one, which is a little odd. And I was getting tired by midweek in this retreat, just to remind you. And it's coalesced. I put 2 in 1. And I did one eye open and one eye closed, which is a bit weird. And there are lots of explanations for that. But I'll tell you what mine is. And this is the symbol of the egg. This is the Brancusi egg, the symbol of new life. Just the beginning. And how you move from one to the other, who knows? But you hopefully do. And this is, as I understood it, was at one level it was watch and pray. A sort of a funny kind of juxtaposition of the two. But the other was ways of coping. I understood it in ways of coping. That some people, for example, when they're told they've got cancer, want all the information. They're on the internet within 2 minutes. They want every detail about cancer and about whatever they've got. And other people cope by turning a blind eye. And I was probably one of those. Didn't want to know. Because in the light of other losses, he was doing me a favour, which is a strange... I remember my surgeon saying, the news isn't good. I said, I don't care. Oh, yes, you do, she said. I said, no, I don't. So we were having this, and at that point in time, I genuinely didn't care. So one eye open, one eye closed. So it varies. The response can vary according to the loss, and people vary. And it's not that you're clever or stupid, it's just ways of surviving and coping. But there is the glimmer of hope there. For this one, I was looking for a perfect piece of stone because there's, again, a huge transition from the egg to this stage, which is moving on and feeling much better. In fact, I think the best word to express it was used by my oncologist in the visitor's book. At least I think it was that word. I couldn't read his writing, but it became the really significant word, which was awakening. It's like waking up again from a nightmare and gently coming to life. And I think that expressed it. But I couldn't find this stone, when I got into it, had a terrible flaw right through. But somebody said, well, people, nobody's perfect. And I used what, in fact, was I was not going to use, but it became very significant. It was like all that's gone before is part of you. It's incorporated, and so it makes you what you are. It's like, don't wipe out your wrinkles because they tell a story, and they are significant. And without them, you'd be bland and boring, really. But you don't ask for pain and suffering in order to become interesting. It's just that whatever life throws at you can be a point of learning and is good. It can be used for good anyway. So she became... hopefully a bit peaceful. And some of the influence of that image was me searching for a role model, and it was wanting, when I felt so ugly, and wanting to identify with something that was good. And in the end, what did it was that just before I was diagnosed, I'd been to China, and only on holiday, with Saga or something. But wonderful, nevertheless. And it was the Buddhist monk that was the image that I thought, how fabulous. And they have Buddhist nuns, I understand. I didn't realize that till I came here. But the Buddhist nuns, where you're serene and calm and bald. So I was very pleased about that. So I was a Buddhist monk in my head for quite a while. So she is beginning to feel much better and be interested in life again and people and the beauty of the world around. And you've been in such a bad place that you're beginning to feel better. And I know I was beginning to feel better when everybody, particularly my family, started to treat me normally. Because they used to treat me with really scared they were and sad. But when I was better, they all breathed a sigh of relief almost tangibly, saying, oh, thank God for that. We can be ourselves, because that was a sort of signal. Well, by the end of the week on this retreat, I was tired, but very, very happy inwardly, really, because I felt I'd resolved things somehow. But I was having just a rest on the bench in this abbey and look a bit like old Mother Riley, really, with something on my head against the sun. But it was this feeling of, je suis content, I am content. It's all right. Which is a big journey from the initial fighting so hard against the reality of whatever it was. So people have again been upset by this because they thought she was dead. And I'm at great pains to say she's not dead, she's sleeping. And so I've stood her up this time in the alabaster carving. And she has become very, very like a fossil, like an ammonite. She's part of the stone. And so in sculptural terms, she's quite a nice one, really. Some are better than others. But what she's saying is this feeling of peacefulness and acceptance that what has happened, whatever happens, can be incorporated into your being, really. And that's what life is like. And this acceptance of the good, the bad, the sun, the rain is something that has been hard for me, maybe very easy for others, but that was a hard one for me. And it forced me to grow up, really. That's what it did. All these experiences from a very happy childhood and things going swimmingly, then the world throws whatever at you. And this was coming to terms with this in a very, very vivid way. But just one last word before you sort of go, and it's as though that's the end of the story and you sail off into the sunset. It's not that at all. It's that at any point with any loss, you may have several losses on the go. You can be at different stages. And you could also be here thinking, oh, life is wonderful. And suddenly you're catapulted back into the most terrible thing. And you go through it all again. And at a personal level, you can cut this out if you want to, but I just got to go into hospital again because I find I've got something on the lung. They don't know if it's a recurrence or whether it's a primary, but what it did was throw me back to here. I said, no, it can't be. I'm 6 years on. They said after 5, you're fine. And what's more, it can't be in the lung. I've not had any trouble with the lung. And denial, and really, really shocked, thinking, can't be. And what's more, they'd have been onto it more quickly if they'd known, but it was. Anyway, the outcome of that is I go in and have an operation, and I know I'll go through a lot of this, maybe in a different order. But the difference is I'm aware. The difference is I'm not in for many surprises. Maybe painful, and that's not nice, but you sort of still have in mind that this is normal. That's normal life. And I think that's a great step forward in understanding. Thank you.
But the story doesn't end there. In 2006, Jean created a new sculpture, which she called Multifaceted. And this new addition replaces the Peace sculpture. In Peace, Jean had depicted herself resting in acceptance. But, as she says in the film, many viewers of the exhibition felt that it represented her death. Jean talks about that moment of rest, of peacefulness, brought about by finding an acceptance of a situation and how it can be incorporated into your being. However, after nearly 10 years of experience and discussions concerning the sculpture, Jean concluded that the sculpture Peace was perhaps not truly reflective of the state of mind that develops in the final stage of grief. And this was when the sculpture Multifaceted was born. Jean said,
I did not want to be left lying down, no matter how comfortable that may have been. This final head is multifaceted, many-splendored, defying the labels of loss and grief, and still journeying on, thank God.
This sculpture reminds us that we are not made up simply of one experience or one moment in time. We are made up of facets of every experience, every challenge, every success, and every emotion we have felt. We are many-splendid, full of magnificent features. Our lives can be rich and also enrich those around us because of it. The artist, Jean Parker, retired to Bude, and sadly passed away in 2017. She leaves this stunning exhibition to help us all on our journeys.
Bold Statements by Jean Parker is part of West Hill Endowment's touring exhibition programme, Create Talk. For more information about the availability of our exhibition resources, please contact West Hill Endowment at www.westhillendowment.org or email us at info@westhillendowment.org or telephone us on 0121 472 8000.